Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Oh, yeah.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF.
Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The one step work.
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
Selves are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off
Just like you,
the
man.
culture of drugs. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. You got the briefcase. It's on the game, though, right?
Okay, so two questions, then we'll go in two directions from that. The first question is, like, who is running the show as far as you're concerned in the Trudeau government, or who was then? And maybe it's Trudeau, but maybe it isn't. And so I'm curious about that. I mean, I've heard from other people that I've talked to that he is markedly absent during discussions of ideational significance, let's say. He's not particularly interested in policy. He's not interested in the details of governing. Now, I don't know that to be true. And so that's part of the reason I wanted to talk to you. And then I also want to know, once you realized who you were actually responsible.
Hey gang, happy Halloween. How's everybody doing? We'll get right back to Jordan there in a moment. So yeah, how's everybody doing today? We've got a good show lined up. We've got a couple of videos to watch. Then we're going to jump into the House Commons. It's not that they start question period early, but there are some good debates on Thursday afternoon. Howdy, everybody. There's a load of people here already. Christine Noseworthy, good to see you. Harold Higgins, welcome. Drew Smith, how are you? James Fahey, brother, what's going on? Mark Maloney, life used to be good. What's shaking? My guys, Mr. Pickles and Captain Kirk, how's it going today? Glenn82, welcome, man. We've got Rory Kennedy, what's going on, brother? Dave B, good to see you. Dan H, how's it going, man? Roband and Roch Green, how you doing? Scott Campbell, brother, what is shaking? Raz, man, how you doing? Happy Halloween, everybody. Canada RV, welcome. Good day, sir. Anybody doing any trick-or-treating tonight? I'm going to have people knocking at the door possibly during this live show. That'll be funny. Cryptomaria, how you doing? What's going on, girl? What else we got? Anybody else? Sorry, we'll get right into Jordan Peterson here.
Responsible to, which is a very good realization, right, in a democratic system, to remember that. And I can understand perfectly well why you would have forgotten that, given the glamour and glitter around in the dawning days and your relative inexperience. Okay, so then once you came to that realization, what changed and what changed? What did you start doing differently and what happened? So let's do the first thing first. Who is running the show, or who was running the show as far as you're concerned, and what did that mean?
Yeah. So as far as running the show, I think most people would remember, Canadians will remember that when Harper was prime minister, that people kept saying that, you know, the prime minister's office was really centralized. All decisions were made there. Nothing changed with Trudeau. It was the central office. It was his principal secretaries, Jerry Butts, Katie Telford, that were primarily running the show. And I don't think I'm the only one that would say this. I would think that, you know, Bill Morneau left, said the same thing. Others have left and said the same thing. So this is not a Selena-ized perspective. This is something that I witnessed and I think is actually true. When it comes to, you know, after the incident with Jody Wilson-Raybould, when Jerry Butts stepped down, I thought he was the only adult in the room. And when he stepped down, it became very apparent that things were going to get a lot worse before it got a lot better. And we could talk about that later.
Yeah,
what happened after? Yeah, what happened after I made that recognition was I did things completely differently. And I still kept getting into a lot of trouble for things, but at this point, I was doing it for the right reasons. I was getting in good trouble. And oftentimes you'd be given a speech and said, here, read the speech, say what's on the speech, and don't deviate. And I'd say, forget it. I'm not saying what's on this speech. This speech has nothing to do with the people of Whitby. It has nothing to do with the people that I serve. Tell me the 3 things that you want me to say that are really important. I'll say those, but I need to make sure that I'm representing Whitby. So I'd write my own speeches. I'd make sure I'd say them in French and English because I didn't want anybody to knock me for it. And I really made sure that I wasn't doing the cookie cutter politician move where you'd see one person sends out a tweet and everybody's tweet looks exactly the same. That wasn't me. I was very clear to make sure that the people of Whitby knew that I was serving them. And if I couldn't tweak the messaging, I posted nothing. And then I think towards the end, towards especially March of 2019, I just decided that I was not going to let the actions of one person dictate how I left government. And I was not going to let Justin Trudeau continue to be presenting himself as this sunny ways, great politician when I knew that he was the emperor with no clothes on.
So what did you do about that? Like, you had some famous blow-ups as you departed from the political scene. Now, this is reminiscent. You mentioned Bill Morneau and Judy Wilson-Raybould. So another of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you is because, you know, 3 establishes a pattern, and there seems to be very close affinity, and maybe I'm wrong about that, but from the outside, close affinity between what happened with Morneau and what happened with Raybould and what happened with you. And that's 3. And so maybe you could let everybody who's watching and listening know about these other people that departed and why you think that happened. And then also tell us when you decided to speak in your own voice again, given that you weren't given the opportunity to speak as the press secretary anyways. So tell us what happened with Bill Morneau and Judy Wilson-Raybould, and then also what happened to you when you started to reclaim your territory, let's say.
Yes, yeah. So it didn't start with us, though. I want to be very clear. Leona Alislev left way before. Decorated military person who decided to leave and cross the floor to the Conservatives really early in our mandate because she was so disenfranchised with the prime ministers. Other people left. After we left, Eva Nessef also left because of the bullying that she received within the party. So there was a few people. So it's not just a 3. By the time Jane Philpott, decorated medical professional, left, we were way beyond 3s at that point. So
yes.
Yeah. So there were quite a few, and I would say for me, I didn't have to have a public blow up with the prime minister. When I told him that I was leaving in early March of 2019, I was very clear for all of the reasons that we discussed before, feeling tokenized, not getting the support of the prime minister, just being very much marginalized within a liberal, which is it makes me so, it is so upsetting because it's one thing to say, you know, you did some missteps, but I felt duped by a party that I really thought understood what it meant to be center, understood what it meant to have equity and justice, what it meant to have those things, and to be disenfranchised by them because I wanted more for the people that I served was disenfranchising for me. Yes, it was.
Yeah, well, definitely.
That is the word. Thank you very much. That is actually the word. Betrayal. And so I called the prime minister and I said, look, I'm not running again. I didn't even have to give him a reason. I said, I'm not running again. It's 4 years. I'm not getting a pension. I'm not getting anything. I just don't want to do this. He said, well, that was the same day that Jody Wilson-Raybould had stepped down. He couldn't have two women of color leave at the same day.
That's what he told you. Really?
Like, dude, that's not my problem.
That was his first response to your...
Yes.
Okay, so no, I'm going to play psychologist here for a minute, okay? Because that's really not, that's seriously not good, right? Because if he was a wise man and if he was a mature man, he would have understood that you divested yourself of your business. Your life took quite a turn, and that even if you two didn't get along, the fact that you'd been in government for only 4 years and you were leaving without running for re-election, without a pension, meant you were going back to square one in many ways. And so the first thing he should have said, even if he would have been somewhat truly self-aware and still putting his own interests first, he should have at least had the bloody sense to act as if he cared about what you were telling him. The fact that his first response was, I'm dead serious about that. Like, even if he was faking it, you know, even if he was a wise faker, the first thing he should have done was said like something like, well, you know, I know we've had our differences. I really appreciate your service. You put an awful lot on the line for this. It's really unfortunate it didn't work out. Is there anything I can do for you to make your departure more straightforward? I wish we could have worked together more sincerely, right? Definitely. And then if he was a genuine human being, so to speak, that would have actually bothered him. But the fact that he came out and said, I can't afford to have two women of color leave me the same day, like, all that means is that every single thing that you regarded as a betrayal was in fact a betrayal. Absolutely. That's absolutely inexcusable.
But wait, there's more. That's not all he said. That was the first thing he said. So I said, you know, Justin, perhaps if not today or tomorrow or at some point in the future, you'll understand the level of sacrifice that I've made to be in this role. And I repeated it again, not today or tomorrow, but someday I hope you understand the level of sacrifice. And then he was not happy with that. He said, oh my God, Selena, I can't believe that you're talking about my privilege. I was like, what? He said, you know, he started talking about the fact that he has, you know, had death threats too. And in my mind, I'm going, but you have an RCMP detail. When me and my kids had death threats, I didn't have anybody, right? Like, so there's a lot of stuff missing from this story, Jordan, I'm not putting out. But he went on and how I needed to appreciate him because he came to the riding during the by-election and how I should be, you know, grateful to him. And I just was like, oh, hell no. And I said a few choice words to him after that, because I lost it at that point. And yeah.
What did you say?
The point of me.
Say?
Oh,
What did you tell him?
Bad
well,
words.
You can tone it down. What were you
no.
conveying? Put it that way.
I was conveying that I wanted him to know, who did he think he was speaking to? Like, I'm not a child. I'm not someone that he could just reprimand. I'm a colleague. And as a person in a professional capacity, if he had went off the way he did with me on someone else, he would have been taken straight to HR. And that doesn't happen because he has parliamentary privilege. And so he's able to get away with those kinds of things. And I wanted to make him darn sure that he was not going to get away with it with me. And I knew that he called on the Prime Minister's line. And so I know that whatever I'm saying that happened in this exchange is recorded somewhere. So I told him, absolutely not. You are never going to speak to me like that again. At the same time, though, Jordan, that would have stayed completely quiet. I would have never mentioned that I had that phone call with the Prime Minister ever until the issue with Jody Wilson-Raybould came up. And
go through that.
Yes. And so Jody Wilson-Raybould, for those who don't know, was the first Indigenous Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, decorated lawyer, really, really, really admirable, smart person. When you talk about merit, absolutely has the merit for the job. Now, whether or not you like what she did within the context of this situation is irrelevant to me. The fact that the Prime Minister's office pressured her to do something that she knew would get her possibly disbarred, and that the ethics commissioner found the Prime Minister in breach of and actually wrong for pressuring her to allow this company to pressure her in doing something with this company is quite telling. So she was actually in the right by not taking the pressure or advice of the Prime Minister. But that's not the point. The point is that after this all happened with Jody stepped down. She was being pressured to do something that she knew was unethical, was wrong by legal standards. She said,
Smash the like, guys. See if we can get some people in the room for question period.
She wasn't going to do it. She stepped down. She was demoted first. Then she stepped down as Minister of Justice and Attorney General. And then she was thrown out of the party, her and Jane Philpott. Jane Philpott, again, decorated medical doctor who was the Minister of Health, the President of the Treasury Board, and another ministry within our government. The Prime Minister, after that, decided that he was going to go on national television and apologize to Canadians for the kerfuffle that was happening within his government. And he said the words of, and I'm going to misquote here, so we could look up the words at some point, but he said, "I want Canadians to know that my office door is open and it is available for anyone to come in, and that I treat everyone with basically kindness and respect and sunny ways." And I listened to that and I said, absolutely not. I had the first phone call with him in which he raked me over the coals for not appreciating him, although I had sacrificed just as much as he did and did exactly what he did to get to his position. I ran, I was elected, he just had a different title. We both worked hard, but I needed to appreciate him for whatever reason, raked me over the coals for that. And then the second time I went to him, I went after that meeting and I said, I was going to go to him and say, look, you know what? We both said things we didn't mean on that phone call. Let's try to
This is the last
be
phone call
adults
that
here.
you described?
That's correct. The last phone call, I went to him after that. And, you know, just like I'm sitting across from you now, said, let's be adults here. We said some things we didn't mean. Let's move it along. The level of contempt and almost hatred that he approached me with, I have never felt more scared in my life of someone to be in a room with someone. And I knew
Have
that
you
that
ever heard of
happened.
wounded narcissism?
Oh,
Is that
no,
a
I
term
have
that
not.
Rings a bell?
No.
Well, beware of it. Seriously. So okay,
I have
so that's
never-
that's a hell of
yeah.
a thing to say. Seriously, that's quite a thing to say.
Yeah.
That you were afraid. Okay, so I want to know
I
why.
was
Why were you afraid? That's a yes, because that's a whole different level of anything that you've revealed so far, right? The worst thing that you've really revealed so far is the last conversation that you had with him where you both lost your temper and exchanged some harsh words, right? And there was all this strangeness surrounding Raybo and Morneau at that time too. But now you go there in an attempt to, what would you say? I wouldn't say
patch it
smooth
up.
over the waters, but yeah.
but
That's right. That's right.
Put some putty on it or something.
Right. Well, and I mean, people get upset and they say things that are emotional,
Yes.
and then they can have a calm discussion about it and set things moderately right so they can go ahead. But
Yes.
you said that there was a terrible tension in the room that you associated with both contempt, and that's not good. Contempt is a very, very
Yes.
dangerous emotion. So married couples going for counseling who roll their eyes at one another have about a 99% chance of being divorced in the next year. Contempt is not good. And contempt plus hatred, that's seriously not good. And contempt, hatred plus fear in the target, that's really not good. Okay, so now tell me exactly what transpired in that meeting and why you had that reaction.
Party is strong and united.
Strong and united? We're going to have to fact check that. Strong. A party that's strong doesn't lose two of their safest seats in by-elections. In June, they lost Toronto St. Paul's. That is one of the safest seats, a seat that they've held for 40 years. Just recently, they lost a Montreal seat. La Salle-Marde was held by a Liberal cabinet minister. Strong parties don't tend to lose safe seats in by-elections. United? Media reports are saying that Liberal MPs had to go to the bathroom to text journalists to tell them how bad their caucus meeting was. And up to 40 members have signed letters or petitions calling on the Prime Minister to resign. Do these sound like the actions of a caucus that is united?
Mrs. Simpson, you're under oath.
We drove around until 3 a.m. looking for another all-you-can-eat fish restaurant.
And when you couldn't find one?
We went fishing.
Did these sound like the actions of a man who had all he could eat?
No! Not at all!
That could have been me!
This sounds like another example of Trudeauing. One of the definitions of Trudeauing is when Justin Trudeau says something that is 100% opposite of what is actually happening. The reality is that they are weak and divided because some Liberals are finally realizing that Canadians are sick and tired of the doubling of housing costs, the quadrupling of the carbon tax, the crime and chaos that Justin Trudeau has unleashed into our communities, and of course the scandal and corruption. Well, millions of Canadians are struggling just to get by. Justin Trudeau makes sure that he rewards his friends, taking taxpayers' money and handing it out to his close insiders. Canadians have had enough, and Liberal MPs that are starting to worry about their own jobs are starting to panic. Strong and united? More like weak and divided.
So the only question now remains.
Well, so gang, what we're going to do now is fix the volume, and then we're just going to take a chance to say hello to some people that are in the room, and we'll say hello to LJ, Terry Hooper, True Blue 104, what's going on? Maria Karma, how you doing? Annie G, always a pleasure. Broken Prophet, good to see you. Dino, what's going on? Lightwalker, welcome. Bixby 99, Gus Pappas, good to see you. Missed you earlier. Canadian Spider-Man, what's shaking? Sylvain Robert, I think I caught you earlier. Mike Tremblay, there you go. Missed you earlier. Rickety. I saw Rickety in here. Jason, the conservative guy. Welcome. How you doing? I think I got you, Mark Maloney. Yeah, hopefully that's close to everybody. Life used to be good. Not sure if I got you. Raz, I'll double check. Nicholas Clement, I don't know what you said, but it probably wasn't just hello. Yentes Bagels, what's going on? Anyways, guys, we'll drop over into the House Commons, see what's shaking there. Let's get to it. Here we go.
Spending made in our name.
Oh, I'll also mention, it is Halloween. I'm probably going to have knocks at the door and stuff. I don't think it'll be picked up too much by the mic, but I'll be in and out maybe today. I'm not sure. It's the first time I've lived in this house for Halloween in 30 years. So, not sure how many kids do trick-or-treating anymore around here. The house I used to live in, I lived in for 9 years, but it wasn't an area where you'd get kids trick-or-treating. So anyways, that's long story short. Short story long.
Slated for weeks because this government refused. The people of my riding, Les Salle-et-Marc-Verdun, voted for me because they wanted to send a clear message to Ottawa. Here is the message. Throughout my campaign, I federated the people who were unhappy, who have had enough of he who shall...
What's up, Brent Parsons? I missed you too. Thaco, what's going on? Linda Lacroix, how you doing today?
Had enough.
Sorry for the
of a prime minister.
I'm finished on names.
Of this prime minister. If you want to send him a clear message, you need to grant your trust in me because the NDP has been blindly voting for the Liberals, and the Conservative opposition simply does not have the numbers to win in our riding. And I repeated this thousands of times, and so I had to share it today. Mr. Speaker, if I may, the people of my riding want the Prime Minister to go. He must now submit himself to our work, to Parliament. And that is the message I've come to deliver today, not in my name, but in the name of all those who voted for me and who elected me. And I wanted to say this, whether people appreciate my words or not. I will now make no further comments on who should lead Canada or not. After all, this could be seen as far...
Screw this, guys. I've got something more interesting to watch than that.
Is when will your government call an election, get out of the way, and allow Pierre Poilievre and his government to get to work for Canadians?
Liberal MP described the Prime Minister's dismissive response to his caucus revolt, Senator Gold, as tone-deaf and disrespectful.
Gang, what's up? Just Ehren right here, Canadian Looney. We're going to take a look at the Canadian Senate. We were introduced to Leo Housakos at the opening of the segment. We're going to see Donald Plett. He's one to watch as well, another Conservative senator. But then we have Mark Gold, who's the leader of the Senate. And, well, it's not hard to tell that he is a true Liberal blood. They say the Senate's independent. This is not the way that I see it. And if you watch the Canadian Senate, you won't either. Anyway, this is a look at the Canadian Senate. Some good, solid questions here from Housakos and Plett. But Mark Gold just deflects and does what he does. He's pretty slick at it, but he's not fooling Canadians if they see it. Let's take a look.
Well, before I begin today, I need to comment and acknowledge the new seating plan in the chamber. Canadians can finally see the entire Senate government caucus solidly behind Senator Gold. On the weekend, a Liberal MP described the Prime Minister's dismissive response to his caucus revolt, Senator Gold, as tone-deaf and disrespectful. You had the same kind of response to Senator Martin's questions last week about 15,000 Canadians waiting hours in the rain for free produce. Tone-deaf and disrespectful. When I challenged you in your comments, you denied making them, Senator Gold. Leader, you've had the time to think it over. Will you withdraw your comments and apologize not just to Senator Martin, but to all the Canadians who can't afford food.
Senator Gold.
Senator Plett, I think I was clear in my response the day after the question and answers exchange, and I'll try to be clear again. I do not believe, it was certainly not my intent, nor do I think it was my words, that cast disrespect or lack of sympathy or understanding to those who are facing challenges putting food on their table. And I'm not going to continue to remind this chamber that, at least from my point of view, the government that I represent and myself personally, I'm trying as best as we can to answer your questions, however you frame them, factually and on the basis of policy. And in that respect, again, I stand by what I said and by the commitment of this government to help Canadians in need.
Senator Plett.
I would suggest you check Hansard, because we just might for you and bring it here. Yesterday, Food Banks Canada reported that a record-breaking 2 million plus Canadians visited food banks in March alone, an increase of 6% over last year. Leader, they're not slogans like you like to say. They're not talking points like you like to accuse us of. They're fellow Canadians, Senator Gold, fellow Canadians. Why aren't questions about their struggles worthy of your respect, Senator Gold? And don't they deserve a government that will put their needs first?
Senator Gold.
Senator Plett, again, you are you are stating what is not true. I have enormous respect and sympathy and empathy for each and every Canadian who is struggling, as too many are, and I stand by that. And no amount of your innuendos changes how I feel and how this government is acting on behalf of Canadians.
Senator Houssakos.
Senator Gold, in the 9 years since 2015, when 194,000 new homes were built under the then Housing Minister, Pierre Poilievre, the only thing that's gone up under your government is the cost of housing. Average monthly mortgage payments after 9 years of Justin Trudeau, double. Average rent for one-bedroom apartment, double. Average down payment for a new home after 9 years of Justin Trudeau, double. Double, double, double. The good news is Pierre Poilievre has a new plan that will see more sorely needed houses that will be built. As Prime Minister, he will axe the tax on the new home builds, cutting the GST for the sale of homes under $1 million. Pretty good ideas. Ideas that your government can't manufacture because you don't have the wherewithal or the desire to accept that you have failed. So the only question now remains is, when will your government call an election, get out of the way, and allow Pierre Poilievre and his government to get to work for Canadians?
Senator Gold.
Senator Houssakos, thank you for giving me the opportunity to correct the record. And in that regard, I congratulate you and your party for being very good at politics. Unfortunately, you're getting a failing grade in policy. So here is the record. When Pierre Poilievre was housing minister, he lost 800,000 affordable apartments, and he got a total of 6 built. And to boot, that's 50,000 fewer homes were being built in this country per year during that period. In just the past year, this government eliminated the GST on apartment constructions to bring down the cost of rent. What did your leader of your party propose to do? He introduced a bill to put the tax back on middle-class apartments. You've announced a plan to completely cut the federal programs to get more homes built and to solve the housing crisis for the middle class and the most vulnerable. The plan will crater home building across the country, driving housing costs up well beyond the savings that he's promised.
Senator Houssakos.
Senator Gold, next you're going to tell us that Pierre Poilievre, during the Harper government, they had running debts and deficits, and thank God to you guys, you balanced the budget and the debt.
Yes.
Stop living in a mythological world. Senator Gold, Pierre Poilievre's plan to axe the tax on new homes will result in an additional 30,000 homes being built compared to your government. Housing expert Mike Moffat not only confirms that number, but he calls this a plan. And I quote, far more bold than anything we've seen from this current government. You like experts? Here's an expert telling you this is a good plan. Embrace it or call an election once and for all.
Senator.
you are wonderfully good at omitting certain facts. How does Pierre Poilievre plan to pay for this attractive political bauble that he's dangling? By eliminating the government programs that have been put in place to help municipalities build more houses, to increase the housing stock. Excuse me, there's politics, bravo, and there's policy. And this government is focusing on policy to help Canadians.
Yep. Senator Platt.
Senator Gold, yesterday Canadians learned that Canada Revenue Agency has been massively underreporting privacy breaches that have paid out millions to scammers. CRA previously told the Privacy Commissioner 113 privacy breaches had occurred over the past 4 years. They now admit the real number is 31,000. 113 to 31,000, impacting 62,000 taxpayers. CRA also admitted it's authorized $190 million in payments connected to these breaches between 2020 and earlier this month. Leader, this is absolutely not worth the cost. When did the NDP Liberal government learn that CRA hasn't been telling Canadians the truth? And is that $190 million gone for good? And can you confirm that I did not previously give you this question?
Senator Gold.
I can confirm that you have never given me a question in advance, and I would be shocked if you would. That's not your job. Look, my understanding is that in the current context and the story that I guess it was CBC that broke this story. These were breaches not of the CRA but of H&R Blok, if I recall. I've been informed that in the event of the fraudulent use of personal data, CRA, the agency, directly contacts the individuals targeted by the fraudsters, carries out close follow-ups to ensure the monitoring and security of these accounts. And indeed, the government has been clear that combating all forms of tax fraud is an important responsibility of the CRA. And the CRA is unfortunately a prime target for fraud attempts, and the security measures that are put in place are constantly reinforced to counter these attempts. I've been informed that processes and procedures are in place to quickly respond and to mitigate threats to taxpayer information and taxpayer accounts.
Senator Platt.
Well, we were all equally surprised that CBC finally did their job. When the Minister of National Revenue was asked about this yesterday in the other place, she said CRA's system are solid and robust. How can this incompetent government say that with a straight face? Can you say that with a straight face, given what we've learned? Leader, has this fraud been referred to the RCMP for investigation? Yes or no?
I'm not aware of what steps may have been taken or will be taken with regard to the breach that the CBC reported. But again, it's important for Canadians to understand that this was not a breach of CRA's security, but rather of the tax advising company whose data was in fact was breached.
So that's just a quick look, gang, at the Canadian Senate. What do you think? Leave a comment. I want to know what you think about the Canadian. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah. The Prime Minister wants to talk about national security. Let's do it. On New Year's Eve, Canadians will be ushering in the Hogue Commission's final report on foreign interference. But meanwhile, media continue to provide insight as to who are the infamous 11 parliamentarians in the pocket of China. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister have trouble sitting at the cabinet table when he must wittingly know that at least one of his ministers is not working in the service of Canada, or is he entirely witless?
Mr. Speaker, that was an absolutely disgraceful display of irreverence and unseriousness in a place that deserves a serious contemplation of issues of national security. But it doesn't surprise me he's choosing to sit with the Conservative Party of Canada, because their leader won't even get the necessary clearance to get the necessary briefing to keep Canadians safe. It's irresponsible, Mr. Speaker.
Smash the like and consider subscribing.
When I met with Iris, she asked that everyone remember and say her mother's name. I hope all members, and indeed all Canadians, will remember this name, Judy Weinstein. Bring her home, bring all the hostages home now.
The Honourable Member from Halifax West.
Speaker, this November we mark our second annual Lebanese Heritage Month in Canada. As a Lebanese Canadian, I'm proud to have sponsored and shepherded this bill into law and invite all to celebrate this special occasion. I encourage all Canadians to connect with their local Lebanese communities, attend an event, share a meal, listen to our vibrant music, experience the pride and passion that define Lebanese heritage. Speaker, Lebanese communities across Canada and around the world are hurting as a result of war and conflicts in the Middle East. I again reiterate my call for an immediate ceasefire and peace in the region. It is my wish that this month becomes a symbol of hope and joy. I invite all to join us on the 7th as we raise the Lebanese flag on Parliament Hill and sing "Lebanon Will Be Back." À toutes et à tous.
To everyone, happy Lebanese Heritage Month.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Heritage.
Today, a tragedy shames our nation. Judy Weinstein, a proud Canadian, is the only Canadian hostage held by Hamas in Gaza. A beloved teacher, Judy and her husband were brutally murdered and taken hostage by the savage attacks on October 7th. For 83 days, Judy's family waited in agony, unsure of her fate. Since that horrific day, Judy and her husband's deceased bodies have been held as human currency, depriving their family of closure. The United States has already taken action. They've issued indictments against Hamas perpetrators, against terrorists responsible for attacks upon Americans. And where is this Prime Minister? Nowhere. He and his foreign minister have failed to confront Hamas terrorists at every turn. We have demanded that Judy be brought home, that terrorists be indicted. The world is watching. Today, Judy's daughter Iris is here in Ottawa. Together, we stand with her.
The Honourable Member from Whitby.
After the deeply disturbing realization that the Indian government has been interfering in Canada's democracy, including the murder of a Canadian citizen and intimidation of many others, how can anyone trust the Conservative leader to protect Canadians when he won't get the same security clearance that all other party leaders have? The Conservative leader knows full well that the NSI COP report indicates foreign interference in the last two Conservative Party leadership races. Okay, so we understand that he's not willing to stand up to protect Canadians or our democratic institutions. No surprise. But you'd think he'd be at least willing to step up to protect his own Conservative MPs. Now, Conservatives love to say sunlight is the best disinfectant, and yet their leader prefers to dwell in ignorance. I'm starting to think that the Conservative leader is so untrustworthy that he doesn't even trust himself with the intelligence. On behalf of Canadians, step up, be responsible, show some leadership, get the security clearance. Anything less is utterly shameful.
The Honourable Member from York Simcoe.
Mr. Speaker, the leader of the NDP is this Prime Minister's top guy. When even Liberal MPs are lining up to take the Prime Minister down, the PM knows he can still count on the leader of the NDP.
Who am I to say? I'm just kind of teasing, but Scott Davidson has a very funny voice or way of delivering, I find.
To have his back. In fact, there's no bigger supporter of the Liberal failed policies than the NDP leader. He supports the Liberals' carbon tax that sent more than 2 million Canadians to the food bank. He supports the Liberal inflationary deficits that resulted in fewer jobs and smaller paychecks for Canadians. He supports the Liberals' catch and release policies that's increased violent crime by 50%. Instead of putting country before party, Party, the NDP leader is putting his pension above everything else. It seems the costly coalition is as strong as ever, despite all the NDP leaders bustling. The sellout leader of the NDP will say and do anything to keep the Prime Minister in power and prevent Canadians from voting in a carbon tax election.
The honourable member from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, reports on the death of the NDP Liberal coalition have been greatly exaggerated. Despite the leader of the NDP's prank on the voters of Elmwood Transcona, Canadians see the truth. Like an unkillable zombie from a Halloween horror show, the Marxist coalition is coming for your soul. The NDP support for the Liberal agenda is making life deadly. The NDP voted for the carbon tax 24 times. These junior Marxists support the Prime Minister's out-of-control spending and Liberal Party corruption. These far-left radicals demanded the soft-on-crime policies that have fueled the terrifying rise in violent crime. Every day the Prime Minister remains in power because the leader of the NDP sold out Canadians. All he offers are tricks with no treats. As we watch the Liberal Party tear itself apart from the inside, Canadians will face a choice when they finally get their carbon tax election. Common sense Conservatives or more corruption on the road to communism.
Mandela hunting returns.
The honourable member from St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, 1 million Canadians have been able to get the dental care that they need, and that number will continue to rise with the over 48,000 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who are now approved to receive care, thanks to our government's Canadian Dental Care Plan. Our government understands that oral care is health care and is delivering dental care to keep Canadians healthy and reduce the strain on our healthcare system. We will ensure that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have access to oral care through the Canadian Dental Care Plan, a program that the Conservatives have blocked every step.
The honourable member from Vancouver East.
After 3 decades of Conservative and Liberal government failures, Canada's community housing stock is the lowest amongst G7 countries. There are about 5,000 people in the Lower Mainland who don't have a place to call home. They have little choice but to try and survive on the street or in encampments. And what is abundantly clear is that forced evictions don't fix anything. They just make the unhoused more homeless. People need dignity, not decampment. Crop Park 10 city residents have traveled from Vancouver East to Ottawa this week for the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness conference. They want to see a tiny home village develop on a vacant Port of Vancouver parking lot. The federal government can take immediate action and invest in this solution to help end homelessness. And this can be replicated from coast to coast to coast in communities large and small. Talk is cheap. It's time to realize housing as a basic human right.
The honourable member for Avignon, La Matisse Matin, Matapedia. Today I'd like to highlight the exceptional work of Matin visual artist Philippe Giroux. His work has long been known beyond our region, but now he also enjoys prestigious international recognition. On October 6, Philippe Giroux was awarded the gold medal from the Société académique des arts et des sciences et des lettres de Paris for his body of work. This local artist paints our rivers, and in particular the Matin River and the wildlife heritage there. He's a true ambassador for the region, and his work have found buyers in 4 corners of the world, including in the US, Holland, Sweden, Germany, the UK, and the Bahamas. Over the years, Philip has won dozens of international prizes and awards. The Mondial Art Academia has honored him for several of his paintings. So, Philippe, you are the pride of our region. Thank you for so magnificently showcasing our part of the country as you do. Bravo and all the best.
The honourable member from Peterborough Kawartha.
What an amazing and exciting announcement. The Conservative Party of Canada will cut the federal tax on all new homes under $1 million. The headlines and reviews of this smart policy are in, and they're fabulous. West End Home Builders Association said the most significant housing policy commitment made in the past 2 decades. Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. This is smart. Habitat for Humanity, eliminating GST would reduce cost. Build GTA, this is a significant step forward in helping housing affordability. LIUNA, the biggest construction union local in North America, this is good policy. Residential Construction Council of Ontario, it will save buyers tens of thousands of dollars on the purchase of a new home. But wait, there's more. Mike Moffat, economist and founding director to Place Centre. Wow, I admire the boldness here. This will get more housing built. There's so much more to say, Mr. Speaker, but sadly, I'm out of time. Here's the bottom line. The NDP Liberals will increase taxes on housing. Conservatives will cut them and build the homes.
The honourable member from Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. The number of the day is 1 million. That's 1 million Canadians who now have access to oral health care to the Canadian Dental Care Plan. Speaker, that's 1 million Canadians, many who are seniors living in our communities who are able to visit a dental hygienist, a dentist, or denturist. Many for the very first time. They are now getting access to health care as they should so their health can improve. But Speaker, the leader of the Conservative Party argues that this program somehow does not exist, and he wants to cut this program. He is going to deprive millions of Canadians from getting good oral health care to Canadian Dental Care Plan. We are proud to have brought this program that is serving now 1 million Canadians who live in all of our communities to get good dental care. Congratulations to all Canadians.
Questions orales, oral questions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Unfortunately, Statistics Canada has revealed today that economic growth in Canada in the third quarter was at just 1%, a weak 1%, a third lower than expected, 2/3 lower than in the United States. Our per capita GDP has gone down for the last 8 quarters out of 9. And it's going down more quickly than in any other G7 country. Is this not the proof that doubling the debt and increasing taxes on capital gains is destroying our economy? The Honourable Minister of Public Works and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative leader is looking for good news. Well, interest rates are down. Inflation is down. Unemployment is down. But it's Halloween, Mr. Speaker, and there's one thing that scares kids. It's that the Conservative leader refuses to get his security clearance to protect Canadians and members of his caucus. When's he going to answer the question and protect? It's a question that all kids are asking today. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. What's scaring people is that their paychecks are getting smaller, Mr. Speaker, every year. And that paycheck can't buy a house because this government doubled the cost of housing. That minister, he's been trying to find affordable housing in his city, and he hasn't been able to after 9 years of this Liberal government, which has doubled the cost, despite the fact that in my time, we built 180,000 new affordable homes, and now we're proposing to cut the GST on new homes. Will he accept my common sense plan? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, kids in my riding are smarter than the Conservative leader thinks. They know how to count up to 6, and it's indeed 6 affordable housing units that the Conservative leader built. Not in my riding, but in all of Canada throughout his entire mandate when he was in charge of housing at the time. But Canadian kids need to know if they should be scared of him. He's not getting a security clearance to protect his own MPs. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Statistics Canada reported terrible news for the Canadian economy today. It grew at a meager 1%, a third lower than foreseen, and lower than our population grew. In fact, it was the 8th out of the last 9 economic quarter where our per capita GDP shrunk. It's fallen more than any other G7 country since the year before COVID. This is the direct result of higher taxes on capital gains, on energy, on work. Why won't they accept our common sense plan? Better yet, why don't they call a carbon tax election so we can fix the economy?
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
I know the leader of the official opposition doesn't like facts getting in the way of his good Halloween story, but here are the facts. Mr. Speaker, 1.6% inflation. The Bank of Canada Governor...
Colleagues, it's important for those, of course, to be able to follow and for the chair to be able to follow what's being said. I'm having difficulty hearing this. I know people who are using the translation devices are also having difficulty. The Honourable Minister of Employment and Workforce Development from the top, please.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. There is a lot of chocolate being consumed on the other side. I can see how energized the Conservatives are, but they're upset because we're sharing the facts. 1.6% inflation in this country. Interest rates are down, 47,000 new jobs in the last month. The International Monetary Fund has Canada positioned as the fastest growing economy in the G7 in 2025. What else, Mr. Speaker? We're going to keep supporting Canadians. We're going to build houses from coast to coast. The Conservatives don't need to like it, but that's how we're supporting Canadians each and every day.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the American economy is roaring while the Canadian economy is snoring. In the most recently reported economic quarter, U.S. GDP grew 3 times faster than Canadian, despite our out-of-control population growth. In fact, per-person income is now lower than it was 10 years ago in Canada, while it's gone up 18% in the U.S. The gap between U.S. and Canadian incomes is worse than at any time in the last century. Why won't they call a carbon tax election so Canadians can vote for powerful paychecks that buy affordable homes on safe streets?
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, it's quite surprising that the Leader of the Opposition isn't taking the bare facts on board, but quite frankly, not just 1.6 inflation or 47,000 jobs. Let's go to what he's trying to distract Canadians from, which as Leader of the Official Opposition, as somebody who someday wants to sit on this side of the House, will simply not go and do the work to get his security clearance. He will not protect his MPs. He will not protect Canadians. Shame on him, Mr. Speaker. Get his security clearance.
Randy's out of control, guys.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canada is a collapsing per-person economy. It means lower wages, which means that Canadians can afford less food, less housing, and governments can afford less for schools and hospitals. It's the direct result. So these are first economic data points that have come out since they jacked up the capital gains tax and now driving billions of dollars south of the border. Why don't they follow our common sense plan to axe taxes? In fact, in addition to getting rid of the carbon tax, why not follow our plan to axe the GST on new homes to build 30,000 more per year? It's common sense. Let's bring it home.
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, we can do the facts game all day long. Let's just focus. The Leader of the Opposition likes to remind people that he has roots in Alberta. So let's talk about the Liberal government's investments in Alberta, Mr. Speaker. $22 billion in clean energy investments for clean electricity, for hydrogen, for greening the grid, for making sure that we have the greenest barrel of oil in the world, Mr. Speaker. The third in the world for foreign direct investment. We are the #1 in the world per capita for foreign direct investment. They don't want to tell Canadians about it. We will, and we'll make sure there are good jobs from coast to coast to coast.
Other Randy is ahead of you in the center.
Then I have the Honourable Member for Salaberry-Surwa. The Liberals' decision to abandon seniors is heartless. Their insinuations suggesting that seniors are too rich to deserve a pension increase are deplorable. There are retirees in Quebec who rely solely on their pension income. They don't have a rainy day fund to face rent increases. They don't have room in their budget to replace their old cars, even with a used one. They're putting food back on the shelves at the supermarket. Why would the Liberals rather risk an election than come to help seniors? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Mr. Speaker, every time that we've put forward proposals to help seniors, the Blok has voted against them. Even with dental care, where it's very, very popular in the members' riding. I heard the leader of the Blok say that initiative is poison, and that's absolutely ridiculous. I would ask the Blok to, think more closely about what it's doing instead of just paving the way forward for the leader of the opposition. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-Surwa. The Quebec Lieutenant is against the pension increase of 10% because there are, among seniors aged 65 to 74, a few rich people like him who don't need it. But it's false. Rich people like him are seeing their pensions cut with clawbacks at tax time. But the 10% increase, they're still already giving it to everyone 75 and up. It's universal. If the Liberals think that it's fair as soon as you turn 75, well, it's also fair for seniors 74 and under. So why are the Liberals treating 1 million Quebecers like second-class seniors? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The colleague is looking for problems with the Liberal approach. Now, since 2015, Mr. Speaker, we have been there to help seniors, and we have reduced senior poverty by about 20% through measures that the Blok and the Conservatives have opposed. But now they're looking for friends, and I would like to warn them that having the Conservatives as a friend in the House of Commons, it's very dangerous for Quebecers. The Conservatives want to cut everything that's in place, including the Canada Dental Care Plan, which is helping 900,000 seniors get affordable dental care right now. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, thousands of renters are very worried their landlords could be using YieldStar software to come to agreements between themselves to raise the cost of rent. In the United States, the FBI has launched an inquiry into that software. We know that YieldStar is used by major landlords in Canada, but the Liberals and the Conservatives are refusing to investigate this to protect profits of big landlords. Will the Liberals defend renters and launch an inquiry so that we can know if landlords are guilty of collusion to increase rent? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. The practice that he's describing is completely unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. Today, I will write to the Competition Board to ask that an inquiry be undertaken. Thanks to the new powers that we've given to the Competition Bureau, Mr. Speaker, we're going to shed light on this issue on this side of the House. We are always going to be on the sides of renters. We will always be on the side of consumers. We will always be on the side of Canadians, Mr. Speaker. This is a major issue, and we are going to defend Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
This is always the way with the Liberals, Mr. Speaker. Behind the scenes, not transparent, gentlemen's agreements. Get it out in the open. Canadian renters are struggling with skyrocketing rents. Tenants are calling on this government to investigate the potential use of AI software by their corporate landlords to hike their rent. The same AI software is under investigation by the FBI in the United States. Yet the Liberals and the Conservatives have stood by greedy corporate landlords by refusing to investigate. Will the Liberals support an investigation into the use of AI in rent fixing and protect Canadians from illegal rent gouging?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I wish the colleague just have heard my answer. We are going to launch an investigation. That's exactly what I said, Mr. Speaker. It's completely unacceptable what we've seen. I'm going to be writing to the Competition Commissioner today to launch an investigation. But the NDP should celebrate what we've done because thanks to our party, Mr. Speaker, we have now powers within the Act in order to investigate. Mr. Speaker, we'll always be on the side of renters. We'll always be on the side of consumers, and we'll always be on the side of Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
It's 4 foot
The Honourable Member from Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, more bad news from experts. New Stats Can data shows that per person GDP is shrinking again. For the 8th time in the last 9 quarters, Canadians are getting poorer. This is a made-in-Canada per capita recession that's lasted 2 years, caused by a government that's driven out investment by hiking taxes on everything: income, financial institutions, housing, fuel, and investment. The opposite is happening elsewhere. Yesterday, the U.S. Commerce Department said the U.S. economy grew at 2.8% last quarter. Will the government admit that this is a made-in-Canada per capita recession?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, it seems that Conservatives can't see past their own doomsday narrative. Canada leads the G7 in reaching a soft landing in the global post-pandemic surge in inflation and highest interest rates. The first G7 country to cut interest rates not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times in a row. This is good news for homeowners who currently have mortgages that need renewal and for first-time homebuyers. Inflation has fallen to 1.6% in September, marking 9 consecutive months within the Bank of Canada's target range. I count that as good news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, here's another expert from the Bank of Canada, Deputy Governor Carolyn Rogers. On March 24th, she issued a stark warning. She said Canada is falling behind other countries because of weak business investment, a lack of competition, and a failure to integrate immigrants into the workforce, all responsibilities of this government. She said, and I quote, "I'm saying that it's an emergency. It's time to break the glass." Simple question. Does the government agree with the Bank of Canada that we are in an economic emergency of their making?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
Canada Governor has also reported numerous times that our government has stuck to its fiscal guardrails, which through that discipline has allowed for inflation to drop in this country. The IMF also, in their World Economic Outlook, projects Canada to have the highest growth in the G7 in 2025. Wages in Canada have outpaced inflation for 20 months in a row. For Canadians, that means more jobs, better wages, and a higher living standard. We should be positive, and I will never apologize for being positive about the future of this country.
The Honourable Member from Durham.
New data from StatsCan confirms a made-in-Canada GDP recession. Over 8 of the last 9 quarters, per capita GDP is in decline. To put that in practical terms, Mr. Speaker, the average American now earns $20,000 more than the average Canadian. The root cause is the Prime Minister's tax hikes. When will the Prime Minister axe the tax hikes that are making Canadians poorer?
Great question. The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'll tell something that the Conservative they want to acknowledge. The root cause of our success, Mr. Speaker, is our Canadian workers, Mr. Speaker. We have attracted record level of investment in this country. These people are reading, I don't know what. Talk to Volkswagen, talk to Honda, talk to Dow Chemical, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Member from South Shore, St. Margaret's, please. I'm going to invite the Honourable Minister to start again. The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, I will always stand up in this House to talk about good news about Canada, Mr. Speaker. Exactly. Canadians should be cheering. This is the land of possibility, of opportunities. We have attracted record level of investment, Mr. Speaker, in this country. Just talk to the CEO of Honda, of Volkswagen, of Dow Chemical, of Northville. People are investing in this country because they believe in our workers. We have the best workers in the world. We have the critical minerals. We have the energy. We have the access to market. We have what we need to win in the 21st century, Mr. Speaker.
He's such a little rat. There, we've got him in a good pose right there. We caught him. FPC's a jackass.
Before I return the floor to the Honourable Member from Durham, I'm going to ask for the second time the honourable member from the South Shore, St. Margaret's, to please now take the floor unless recognized by the chair. The honourable member from Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals across the aisle may be having a party or some kind of celebration, it seems, but in the process, they are cutting the standard of living in Canada. They are slashing the quality of life for people in our country. It's their tax hikes, their increases in the capital gains tax, housing tax, carbon tax that are making life difficult for Canadians across our country. When will they accept some responsibility for what's happened for the last 9 years and axe the tax hikes that are making Canadians poorer?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House.
Talk about celebrations. 10 years ago today, former Conservative MP Dean Del Mastro was found guilty, Mr. Speaker, of violating the Elections Act. That was the leader of the Conservatives' buddy at the time, Mr. Speaker. He actually went on to become the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, and the Parliamentary Secretary at the time was the leader of the Conservative Party, who was advanced to become the Minister responsible for elections. He tried to delete thousands of Canadians from being able to vote, Mr. Speaker. Why should any Canadian have confidence in the leader of the Conservative Party, Mr. Speaker?
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, let's be serious. We all know that this government is costing Canadians a lot of money, but now StatsCan is proving it. The last numbers show that per capita GDP has dropped 8 times over the last 9 quarters. What does that mean? That means that GDP has gone up barely by 1% this quarter. In the United States, it's up 3%. The Americans are 3 times luckier than Canadians because of this government. Will the government finally understand that increasing taxes doesn't help Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So on Halloween, my esteemed colleague that I respect a lot can invent as many numbers as he wants. It's not going to work. What he can do is ask his colleague, who's sitting right next to him, the member for Brantford-Brant, to rise at least one time in this House to apologize for his words about French last week. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. The member knows very well that he apologized, Mr. Speaker. What's the reality here? The reality is that it's time to put the focus on the economic reality. And if this university professor was attentive to reality, then he would see what StatsCan has put forward and that it's real. And even The Economist, I'm sure he's familiar with The Economist. He's probably read at least once in his life. The Economist concluded that Canada is now lower than Alabama, the poorest state in the United States. Is he proud of his record? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Well, let's talk about 3 realities. Economic reality. Interest rates are down, inflation is down, unemployment is down. Let's talk about the reality that the Conservative leader still doesn't understand on Halloween. It's that the Canada Dental Care Plan exists. It hasn't magically disappeared. Third reality, it's that the member for Brantford-Brant has still not apologized in this House.
Sorry guys, I've got a trick or treat.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, it's Halloween, and the worst house of horrors is right here in Ottawa. It's the Canada Revenue Agency. Fraudsters got $6 million in fake tax returns. The agency didn't even realize that different people were seeing their money paid into the same bank account. And that's not it, Mr. Speaker. There's one particular fraudster who managed to modify his tax returns to try and get $40 million back. And the CRA gave him $10 million before the guy's bank told them that something fishy was going on. How many other cases like this of fraudsters who have 2 hands in the candy jar? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, fraud is completely unacceptable, and I can assure you that we are taking the necessary measures to deal with the situation. Obviously, the CRA, with all the personal information that it has, is a target of choice, but it's not the agency that's directly targeted, but often the information that we share as citizens through different systems is more at risk. So personally, we all need to be more careful, but the agency is very vigilant. We have experts who are being very careful, and as soon as fraud is identified, the citizen impacted is informed and the account is blocked, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, the Minister might think that it's our fault, but we want to know how many other times the agent...
Sorry to interrupt, but that's the first time I've ever had trick-or-treaters come to my house.
Agency has been a victim of fraud because there's a lack of verification, because the agency has been hiding the real numbers. Since 2020, in 2020, they've told the Privacy Commissioner there have been 113 cases where private information has been used for fraud. But when media asked questions, the agency revealed that it wasn't 113 cases. There were more than 31,000 cases. The minister, meanwhile, is a true ghost. She's refused to stand and participate in interviews. So why can't she tell the truth the first time? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, you know, I do what I say what I do, and I'm not hiding from anyone. The law prevents us from discussing specific cases. The member knows that. However, the agency is very well equipped. We have experts. We're working with all kinds of specialists. We're working with other countries as well to share best practices. And there was a meeting just 2 weeks ago in Ottawa, and I can tell you that we're doing what we have to do, and we have the experts that we need. The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, we're seeing more and more fraud at the CRA because nobody is doing the necessary verifications, including the Minister, who has the power to request investigations. And that's not even counting cases where there was where the agency frauded itself, where we had 330 employees who gave themselves a CERB and had to be fired. It's vampires who are guarding the blood bank, Mr. Speaker. The CRA is haunted by problems with verification, with accountability, with transparency, with leadership. It needs a little exorcism, I think. When is the Minister going to clean things up? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, the Canada Revenue Agency has 60,000 employees. When we went through COVID, there were a number of countries that envied us because our country, our Liberal government, did what was necessary to help people, to help businesses, and that's why we've had a softer landing than almost any other country in the world. 60,000 employees, and all those who got CERB were verified one by one because they did what was necessary, and the necessary actions were taken.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Just a few days after the Leader of the Opposition introduced a common-sense plan to axe the GST on new home sales, even the Housing Minister's own advisors were raving about the proposal. Right. Economist Dr. Mike Moffat said, quote, "It's a bold, bold plan," and he calls himself, quote, "a big fan of the idea." He and other Canadians know that housing has become out of reach and the government has doubled its cost in this country. So will the Housing Minister listen to his own advisors and implement our common sense tax cut so that Canadians can finally afford a home?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
If the member is going to quote Mike Moffat, Mr. Speaker, she ought to include the entire quote. What he said was that if the Conservative proposal was to go ahead, they ought not to propose things like getting rid of the Housing Accelerator Fund. They ought not to also get rid of infrastructure programs that enable housing, Mr. Speaker. He should listen. If he doesn't want to listen to Liberal MPs, that's fine. He should listen to Conservative MPs, a dozen, Mr. Speaker, probably more, who want the Accelerator Fund, who have advocated for it because they know it's vital to getting more homes built.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Or maybe that member should listen to the Housing Minister, who said his $3 billion of Housing Accelerator money built 0 homes. Right. 0 is less than the 195,000 homes built under the Leader of the Opposition when he was Housing Minister. And now add this to the stellar record of a guy who broke our immigration system, who lost track of all of the people that he
friend on the
he let in. While the Prime Minister is fighting his own caucus, he gave that minister a promotion. So when will the Housing Minister leave Fantasyland, join Conservatives in the real world, and axe the tax so we can build the homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Years ago, Mr. Speaker, when I worked with the Leader of the Opposition on the Finance Committee, he told me something that might shock you. It's hard for him to make friends because of his personality. What we look at now is he at least has one friend on the opposite side. His best friend, as I understand it, Mr. Speaker, the MP for St. Albert Edmonton. In fact, that member has advocated for the Housing Accelerator Fund. He went behind the Leader's back. I hope it doesn't affect their relationship, their friendship, Mr. Speaker. He went behind his Leader's back to advocate for the half, and they want to get rid of it.
Order. But if you're going to heckle, let it be a good joke. Anyway, the Honourable Member from Kenora.
They're not worth the cost of housing, Mr. Speaker, and many young Canadians have given up completely on their dream of home ownership, and it is why common sense Conservatives will axe the federal sales tax on new homes. Mr. Speaker, for an $800,000 house, this tax cut would save the home buyer $40,000. In other words, $2,200 per year in mortgage payments. So, Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister finally listen to our common sense plan, axe the GST on housing to ensure that young Canadians can finally afford a home?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Slogans, Mr. Speaker. You scratch the surface of that so-called idea, what do you find? They would axe something. They would get rid of the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is so crucial. What does it do? It provides funding for affordable housing to counter homelessness. It provides funding for zoning changes. It provides funding for housing enabling infrastructure, for community centres, Mr. Speaker, even for vacant buildings in downtowns, Mr. Speaker, so they can be converted for housing. If he doesn't believe me, take the member for Central Okanagan who advocated for it, their former finance critic who unfortunately is on the back benches because he advocates for good programs.
The Honourable Member from Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this week's special interlocutor, Kimberly Murray, delivered her final report on missing and disappeared Indigenous children and unmarked burials in Canada. Among the obligations was adding residential school denialism to the criminal code. It is an essential measure to protect survivors from incitements of hate and violence. The Attorney General accepted this report, but will he listen to survivors, adopt my bill, put an end to the incitement of hate, and implement this obligation now?
You're here. The Honourable Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from Winnipeg Centre for that very important question. I want to acknowledge the report from the Special Interlocutor, which was received by the Attorney General earlier this week. It puts forward some very compelling issues that should be discussed and studied. We as a government are going to look into it, and we will get back to both the Special Interlocutor as well as Canadians on next steps forward.
The Honourable Member from Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians' homes have been swept away in floods, and hundreds of people have died in BC's heat waves. This week, the Lancet report revealed a stark escalation in health threats caused by the climate crisis. Despite this, and against all advice, the Liberals keep handing out billions in subsidies to oil and gas. And the Conservatives can't even agree if climate change is real. The health of Canadians is at stake. Will the Liberals stop fueling the climate crisis and end fossil fuel subsidies today?
Yes.
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for her question. The good news is that Canada is the only G20 country to have eliminated fossil fuel subsidies thanks to the NDP, Mr. Speaker. I'd be happy to provide her office with a briefing on this. Thank you.
Bravo. The Honourable Member from Kitchener South Hespeler.
Mr. Speaker, dental care is health care. Today we have hit a milestone of 1 million Canadians who have already accessed care with our government's Canadian Dental Care Plan. A single visit to the dentist can cost hundreds of dollars. Canadians shouldn't have to cancel their dental appointment because they can't afford it. Can the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions tell this House how the Canadian Dental Care Plan will make life more affordable for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the member for her question, Mr. Speaker. Today we've hit a milestone across this country. Over 1 million Canadians have access to dental care services. That is certainly something that we, on this side of the House, we are proud of, Mr. Speaker. But this is what we know. Here are the facts. Conservatives continue to vote against Canadians. They vote against dental care plans. They vote against the things that make life make sense. Common sense for Canadians, whether it is dental care, whether it is affordable child care, whether it's a national school food care program. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we are taking care of what matters most to Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
After 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. The Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed that the carbon tax is costing Canadians more than they get back. The Prime Minister's plan to quadruple the carbon tax will cost Manitoba families an extra $1,300 per year. Evergreen Basic Needs, a food bank in Gimli, Manitoba, has seen a 30% increase in usage since 2020. When will the Prime Minister finally start listening to Canadians and have a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, what the member is saying would be tragic if it was only true, which is not. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has said in his report that Canadian gets more money back from carbon pricing than what they pay, Mr. Speaker. And that's even after he doesn't factor in the impacts of climate change. July and August of 2024 are the costliest months ever. It's the costliest year ever for climate impacts in Canada. $7 billion in climate impacts, Mr. Speaker. What do the Conservative have to say about that? Let the planet burn. Not on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. We will work to fight climate change and we will work to support Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Well, the Minister knows that a tax plan isn't an environment plan. Yeah. And with the Prime Minister's out-of-touch policies and reckless spending, 1/4 of Canadians are relying on food banks this fall. Sadly, this includes members of the Canadian Armed Forces who can't afford to eat under this costly Liberal NDP government. Earlier this year, military personnel doing cyber training at Wills College had to rely on food banks because they couldn't afford to eat. At one point, college staff even had to set up a food bank to support them in the college. Will the Prime Minister quit making life more unaffordable for our troops and call a carbon tax election?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
I've heard a number of Conservative MPs just talk about Jasper. Let's talk about Jasper, Mr. Speaker. Do you know how much money?
Order, colleagues. Order.
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 Doofus.
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change from the top.
Let's talk about Jasper, Mr. Speaker. Do you know how much they invested in 2011 in prescribed burns and mechanical removals around Jasper? $0, Mr. Speaker. They cut funding for $30 million in 2010, 2011, all the way to 2015. Do you know who was the director of the Minister of the Environment in those days? The member for Thornhill, Mr.
Colleagues, at some point we're going to run out of time to be able to have all the questions posed. The chair cannot hear the answer. Can we allow the minister to please give his answer so that we can move on to make sure that all the questions that have been planned to be asked today be asked today? The Honourable Minister from the top, please.
For 4 consecutive years, the Conservative Party of Canada slashed funding for Jasper fire prevention by $30 million every year, Mr. Speaker. We've invested in the last 6 years alone $800 million. And if the Conservatives want to blame someone, they can go and talk to their colleague from Thornhill, who was the director of the Minister of the Environment in those days, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Colleagues, I see members from all sides of the House who are dependent upon translation devices who cannot hear what the answer is, or in sometimes the question is. I'm going to ask the honourable member from Cumberland Colchester to ask this question. I'm asking all members to please listen attentively.
Speaker, after 9 years, the NDP Liberals are not worth the cost. Stats are clear. Nova Scotians relying on food banks have increased by over 50% in the last 5 years to over 40,000 visits per month. Another staggering report this morning shows that 40% of Atlantic Canadians are struggling to afford necessities like food, rent, and home heating. The failed former Minister of Immigration and now floundering Minister of Housing clearly cannot help Nova Scotians, but Speaker, there is an answer. Will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start by saying Happy Halloween to Canadians today. But what kids should be most frightened about this Halloween is the cuts that would be made by the Conservative leader. And I apologize to Johnny Depp in advance, but the leader of the Conservatives is like the Edward Scissorhands of politics. You know what else is truly spooky is that the Conservative leader refuses to get his security clearance to protect Canadians against foreign interference. I can only speculate he must be concerned about the ghosts in his closet.
Colleagues.
And then in the next moment, they'll act like that they're nice people and they don't throw out huge insults. And to insult people isn't proper decorum. I don't know what Greg Fergus is going to say here, but he better tell Turnbull that he's got to back off that talk, because he does it to the Conservatives for much, much less. Anyways, it's just bullshit. When you watch it all the time, you know that this is a powerful dupe they're playing on us. And they're relentless, like they're sick.
Comparing any individual member to a fictional character is not within the realms of what we're doing here. I'm going to ask all members to restrain themselves from doing that. The honourable member from Brandon Souris has the floor.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberal government, life is more expensive than ever.
That's right.
Food Banks Canada's hunger report indicates over 2 million Canadians used food banks in March, up 6% from last year. In my riding, the Samaritan House Food Bank saw nearly 2,000 more people accessing their services in the last 2 years. 4 in 10, Mr. Speaker, were children. 1 in 10 was a senior. Despite this, the NDP Liberals continue to increase the cost of groceries by increasing the carbon tax. When will this Prime Minister call a carbon tax election?
That's right. When? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the House, Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This question has already been answered. But let me tell you and talk about the foreign interference. The Leader of the Conservative Party says, Mr. Speaker, not to worry. My Chief of Staff has the clearance, and he will tell me. The Leader of the Conservative Party doesn't understand law, Mr. Speaker. It would be illegal for the Chief of Staff to give the names to the Leader of the Conservative Party, Mr. Speaker. It's time. It is time. Okay.
Holding up on the BS right there. You're covering animals with duct tape.
The Honourable,
I think they're willing.
Parliamentary Secretary.
I don't think they're hijacked. They're willing.
Order. Order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary has 7 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Conservative Party doesn't understand it. He's asking his Chief of Staff to break the law. That is a bad thing. You need to understand. Breaking the law.
Order.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquis-Angers. The filibuster in the Senate against C282 and the protection of supply management should outrage every party. No one here should accept that two unelected senators, are trying to overturn the majority vote of all parties in this House. This is a full frontal assault on democracy. Peter Beam and Peter Harder are unelected individuals who act like monarchs appointed by divine right. Letting these two get away with it is like dialing democracy back 3 centuries. Enough. Will the Prime Minister ask them to immediately pass C282? The Honourable Minister for National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With all the respect I have for my colleague, I feel that he should also respect our institutions, whatever his opinions of them are. It's important we are for supply management, 110% for supply management. We want this bill to be adopted. We supported this bill. A number of us have encouraged our Senate colleagues to act much more rapidly. We're asking them loud and clear to act with due diligence. We want it to come back as quickly as possible, but they are independent. We have to let them do their job. But we are ready to receive this bill once again. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquis-Angers. The biggest institution is our democracy, Mr. Speaker. Peter Beam and Peter Harder, two unelected individuals, even refused to meet with the Minister for International Trade at committee. They took care to meet every imaginable group opposed to supply management, but they didn't want to see the Minister. This is full proof that the Prime Minister must personally intervene. He is the one who appointed these senators, who now want to turn the Senate back into the House of Lords, superior to the House of the People. We can't allow this to happen. When will the Prime Minister finally ask his two monarchs to stop harming our farmers and producers? Before we move on to the answer, I would just like to remind all members it is part of our usual practices and it's part of our regulations to always be respectful of the other place and those who are taking care of the other place. So I'd ask members to be careful in the vocabulary used. The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. My colleague is right. Harming farmers and producers is exactly what the Blok Quebecois is doing by allying themselves with the Conservatives. Only the Conservatives are for now against supply management, so signing an alliance with them, saying that all they'll do now is try and trigger an election.
Thank you signing up, Storm, for signing. Try that again. Thank you for signing up, Storm. Much appreciated. Yeah, other people, we're here all the time. We're trying to do more things for members. We're working on it. Anybody that can grab a membership, that's appreciated.
Means that they support Conservatives that will cut, including supply management. And so they're going to have to explain this to their electorate as well. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, Moisson-Saigny-Lac-Saint-Jean, a food bank, states that there are 2 times greater an amount of people asking for help than 2 years ago. More and more people are fighting just to feed themselves. The Blok Quebecois has done nothing for Quebec. Why does the Prime Minister and the leader of the Blok Quebecois prefer to feed bureaucracy in Canada rather than allow Quebecers to feed their families? The Honourable Minister for Fisheries and Oceans. Listen, the leader of the Conservatives and the Conservatives have always shown their true colours. They've confirmed that their main plan is to cut, Mr. Speaker.
What kind of fish is this chick eating? My goodness. These Liberals, every minister is worse than the next one or the last one. It's just they're all so screwed up. She's a sow.
Chop, Mr. Speaker. Medicare, Pharmacare, chop. They have understood. And children are scared of the Conservatives. It's Halloween and they are absolutely spooked by the Conservatives today. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-le-Fjord. It's rather ridiculous, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years of our Liberals, food banks cannot meet demand. 107% increase in food bank use in my riding. Those who used to give food are now those who are coming to get food. This because of this government's obsession to tax fuel and everything, and food. And the Blok agrees because they voted for confidence twice. They voted against Quebec, so it's high time for an election. When will the Prime Minister finally trigger this election, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister for Fisheries, Oceans and the Coast Guard. Mr. Speaker, you were right earlier. You can't compare people from fictional characters because the reality is worse than fictional characters, Mr. Speaker. What I would like to know is when will our colleagues inform us of the other cuts they will make? Cuts to the most vulnerable, those who they will attack, those who find it hard to put a roof over their heads. We are impatient to hear what they're going to cut next. And we invite them to clean up their own act and get their own security clearance before that. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this Halloween, the Liberal scarecrow has been spooking Canadians for 9 years now. They're impoverishing our families, our seniors, and our young people. With the pure complicity of the Bloc Quebecois, they are letting the poor suffer and beg for food. Today, in the La Presse newspaper, the headline is The Silent Crisis. The Moisson Montréal Food Bank notes a sharp increase in requests, with 1 million requests per month. And unfortunately, 14% of these requests are from students. Why do the leader of the Bloc and the Prime Minister prefer to feed the bureaucratic machine in Ottawa rather than allow Quebecers to feed their families? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. It's rather astounding, Mr. Speaker, to hear Conservative members talking about how we need to take care of children when their very leader says that it's sheer bureaucracy to support breakfasts and free food in our schools, in my riding, in his riding. So how can my Conservative Quebec colleagues accept that their leader call this sheer bureaucracy? I know it's Halloween. I know that everyone's looking forward to trick-or-treating this evening. But come on. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier has had his opportunity to ask his questions, so he should wait his next turn to speak. Now, the Honourable Member for Louis-Hébert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative leader comes to Quebec and has promised to fund a hypothetical third link. And no one knows what the costs are going to be. But he doesn't seem to be shy in removing dental access to the 10,000 youth that have been able to have dental care in my riding. Now over 1 million Canadians have received necessary dental care that we implemented, and the Conservatives are threatening this. Can the Minister for Public Services and Procurement explain to us how this programme benefits Canadians from coast to coast to coast? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. It's Halloween, Mr. Speaker, and the Conservative leader is quite the prestidigitarian. He says that dental care doesn't exist. Poof! He just managed to make it disappear. He says that it doesn't exist, but he can't say why he's against this dental care. But there are 20,000 seniors in one single Conservative riding that can now have access to dental care. How will the Prime Minister, the leader of the Conservatives, make these 20,000 people disappear?
Mr. Speaker, 9 months ago, Belleville, Ontario was rocked by an opioid crisis. 36 overdoses in only 48 hours. This Prime Minister said he would be there for Belleville, Ontario, but after 9 months, not one more dollar for infrastructure, no more treatment beds. And just last week, we had 11 overdoses in only 2 hours. Wow. How many more months does Belleville, Ontario have to wait for any support for mental health from this Prime Minister?
I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Orléans to not take the floor unless recognised. The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as the member well knows, I visited Belleville and met with the mayor and all stakeholders involved, because every loss of life in Belleville or in any community.
This woman is crazy and dumb. She can't handle the Kool-Aid. Most of them have confidence. You don't believe that she has any confidence. And again, I don't think they were hijacked. I think she was convinced by the inside, and she's just not good at her job because she's stupid.
Across this country is tragic, Mr. Speaker, but that is exactly why we launched the Emergency Treatment Fund, which is already open and accepting applications from municipalities and from Indigenous communities across this country, because we are there for communities, Mr. Speaker, each and every day. Harm reduction, treatment, all of these tools are health care, Mr. Speaker, and we will stand by communities and save lives.
The honourable member from Bay of Quinte.
Well, Mr. Speaker, while Belleville's waiting for any dollars from the federal government, Belleville's been paying dollars to the federal government. Belleville Council this week released a report that showed over the last 5 years they've paid $1.5 million to the carbon tax and getting no refund. You know, when this money could have went to supporting mental health, could have paid for the renovations for their hub for mental health. Not only that, when this Prime Minister quadruples that tax, Belleville's going to pay $5 million in 5 years. Why doesn't the Prime Minister give that money back to Belleville, or better yet, call a carbon tax election so Belleville and its residents can decide how to spend their money on mental health?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me be clear, actions speak louder than words. When the Conservatives were in power, Mr. Speaker, they cut the drug treatment fund by 2/3. Let me ask this to the member. Why does he allow the leader of the Conservatives to use those who struggle with addiction and substance use as props in fundraising rather than standing by those who need help? Why do they advocate to close safe consumption sites that have saved 58,000 lives? They don't care, Mr. Speaker. They will not invest in what's needed. On this side of the House, we are fighting to save lives. Shame on them for criminalizing people who need health care.
The Honourable Member from Kildonan and St. Paul's.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, crime is up and churches are being targeted. A Winnipeg neighbourhood saw a 61% increase in crime. Churches are having to pay thousands of dollars for repairs and security. One church had to put up an 8-foot barbed wire fence to keep criminals out. A woman was victim to an armed carjacking while leaving church, and 2 people died last month after a church was set on fire. In fact, 30 churches have been burned to the ground over the past few years, and countless more have been vandalized in Canada. When will the Liberals stop blocking the Conservative Bill C-411, which specifically holds arsonists accountable for church burnings?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we believe in this country everyone deserves to be safe where they go to school, where they pray. Mr. Speaker, safety in our communities is our utmost importance. This is why we have provided more funding to help religious institutions, places of worship right across this country to put in place additional measures to help keep them safe. Mr. Speaker, we are deeply committed to this. This is not something the Conservatives own, because we are investing in our communities to keep all places of worship safe.
All right, gang, quick question for you. Do you think this is funny? So if you ever notice that I write things down, I'm writing down the order in which they speak. It does save a lot of work later on. Anyways, right there, when I was writing down Jennifer O'Connell's name, I didn't realize until I was on the second L that I was spelling smelly cat. That's a true story. I can show you. Anyways, that really happened. Sorry to interrupt.
The Honourable Member from Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians from different ethnic backgrounds are now scared. They can be target of violent crimes by foreign nations. The RCMP believes agents from India have been targeting the Sikh community, bullying, blackmailing, and even plotting to kill some of them. Foreign interference is a serious issue, and all of us need to work together to protect Canadians. Can the Minister for Emergency Preparedness tell us, this House, to the best way to protect Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Preparedness.
Mr. Speaker, the allegations made by the RCMP over the intimidation, the extortion, murder by a foreign government on Canadian soil should be taken serious by all parties. We owe it to the Sikh community and to all Canadians to put partisanship aside and work on solutions to assure the integrity and sovereignty of our country. And that is why it is deeply disturbing that the Conservative leader still refuses to get a security clearance. Why is he willing to put our democracy and the security of Canadians at risk?
The Honourable Member from London Fanshawe.
London families with loved ones trapped in Sudan have been failed by this government. It has been 8 months since the Liberals announced a program to bring families in Sudan to safety, but only 5 applications have been approved. As the humanitarian crisis in Sudan gets worse, more and more people will die.
In case there's anybody that's wondering, this Matheson, she is a sellout as well. If you see her in committee, she's a problem for patriots.
Londoners were promised their family would have a path to safety by this government. Will the minister fix his failed program so families can save their relatives before it's too late?
The Honourable Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
We worked with families to devise this program. She also knows well, or should know, that since the war broke out, we have facilitated the departure of 9,000 people from Sudan. In this particular program, we will continue to reunite families and work through to make sure that they come to Canada in safety.
The Honourable Member from Saanich, Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And unspeakable tragedy. A Canadian mother of 6, known as FJ only. Her 6 children were repatriated to Canada, but this government refused to allow their mother to travel with them. She's now dead in a Turkish prison. I ask the honourable government members here, the Minister for Public Safety, the Minister for International Affairs, will they follow the requirements of justice to have an immediate independent investigation into FJ's death and immediately repatriate all remaining Canadian detainees in northeast Syria?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Honourable Member from Saanich Gulf Islands for her compassion and for her concern for people around the world. It's well noted and respected. My thoughts are indeed with children who have already endured so much in this particular situation. We are well aware of these reports, and we are treating this situation with the utmost seriousness and the sense of urgency it absolutely deserves. Unfortunately, I'm not able to comment further due to privacy concerns, but we will continue to keep this House updated. Thank you.
Oops. It being 3:19, the House will now proceed to the taking of deferred recorded division on the motion to concur in the second report of the Special Joint Committee on Medical Assistance in Dying.
Yeah, so we're going to get it there, and I'm going to get this up and ready to show. This was a wild meeting, guys. I'm just going to run this in the background. I don't expect people to say.
Before we begin, I'd like to ask all in-person participants to remain cognizant of the rules surrounding the earpieces, and when not using the earpiece, to put it on one of the stickers to your left or right. These measures are in place to prevent audio feedback incidents. And a reminder to all those in person and online that for the safety of our interpreters, that it is very important that your microphone is muted when you're not speaking. Merci à tous pour la coopération.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Comment should be addressed to the chair. Conformément à l'article 108.3G du règlement.
Pursuant to standing order.
Sorry, gang. I'll do a better extra than that. So I've got to go because it's Halloween. Like, I normally wouldn't do this, but I've got to attend the door, and I've got this incredible committee meeting to show right here, and we're going to show it. What is going on with my screen? Anyhow, thank you all for watching. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be back tomorrow. Fridays, we start early. So if you haven't already, like, subscribe, share, get notified for the live shows. We have a blast here all the time. It's an amazing chat room. Thank you all for tuning in. And this is a committee video worth watching.
The 108.3G, the committee is continuing its study on Report 6, Sustainable Development Technology Canada, the 2024 reports 5 to 7 of the Auditor General of Canada.
Welcome our witness who is returning as an individual, Mr. Navdeep Bains. Mr. Bains, you do have time for an opening comments, up to 5 minutes if you'd like to take it. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Bonjour tout le monde. Monsieur le Président,
Good afternoon, everyone, Mr. Chair.
I've made, at your request, I've made myself available today for a third appearance at committee to answer questions about Sustainable Development Technology Canada. I'm happy to be here and answer your questions as best I can. At my last appearance at this committee, there were a number of questions, and I want to open today where we left off. Members posed a question regarding a phone call between Ms. Verschoen and I prior to her appointment. I do not recall such a conversation taking place. But as I explained last time at committee, it was not uncommon for me to speak to prospective candidates during a selection process or to encourage candidates to apply for positions. Sometimes I encouraged multiple people for the same position. Canadians and our government always benefited from open, transparent, and a highly competitive appointment process. Members also posed questions with respect to the candidates that were recommended to me via a PCO advice letter. As I said in my previous testimony, I've made over 100 governor and council appointment recommendations as a minister. And I do not recall, after several years, who applied for specific positions at that time. Assuming there were multiple people recommended for each position, this could be in excess of 400 names recommended to me during my tenure, all of which occurred more than 4 years ago. Members also offered a line of questioning regarding the former Sustainable Development Technology Canada employee, Amber Batul. At CIBC, Ms. Batul worked at Capital Markets and supported the team, including myself. I do not recall meeting Ms. Batul before she started at CIBC. In fact, the only reason I know we had ever met or crossed paths is because during the interview process, Ms. Batul stated that we had met a few times beforehand, something I did not recall at that time. It is important to note that Ms. Batul went through a rigorous process consistent with CIBC HR policies. Finally, I would like to address a line of questioning by a few parties with respect to this appointment. At the time of her appointment, Ms. Verschoen's credentials were impeccable. She was a Canadian business leader and served Prime Minister Harper, Minister Flaherty, and Minister Paradis in various capacities. As I've stated before, Sustainable Development Technology Canada is an arm's-length organization. My role as minister was to appoint 7 of the 15 board members. It was not to oversee the day-to-day operations of the organization, nor was it to manage the board. As an arm's-length organization, it was the board's responsibility to manage their conflicts of interest, as is the case with all designated public office holders, and follow the rules and process, something the Auditor General has identified did not happen. As this is my third appearance at committee on this matter, I would like to request that if after my appearance there are any additional questions the committee has, I would be more than happy to answer them in writing. I look forward to answering your questions. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. Appreciate that. I'm going to begin to open up our first round, which is 4 members with 6 minutes each. And Mr. Perkins will lead us off. You have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, former Liberal Minister Baines, for coming back, as you point out, a third time before a parliamentary committee on the issue of SDTC, the Liberal Green Slush Fund. You're obviously aware that this committee did not feel at the end of the last meeting, or at least a majority of the members, that you were actually making an attempt to answer the questions. And we had a long discussion about whether our privilege was breached. And we've decided, on the suggestion of a number of members, to give you another shot and see how it goes today. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask some similar questions to what I did before, and I appreciate your opening statement. But before I ask those, I just want to get a clarification. You work at Rogers currently. Could you explain to me what your title and role is, please?
Thank you very much again, Chair, for the opportunity to speak here today. As I've indicated, the topic that I was asked to speak on was Sustainable Development Technology Canada, and look forward to answering questions pertaining to that topic.
So here's the first answer. Very simple question that you didn't answer.
Yeah, just hold on, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Baines, you're saying you can't provide your current employment title and location? I mean, that does seem a bit, well, unusual. I suspect it's in the public domain. And
it is in the public domain, Mr. Chair. And I look forward to answering questions pertaining to the topic of Sustainable Development Technology Canada today.
All right, Mr. Baines, I don't know how this is going to go. Mr. Perkins, you have the floor. You have 5 minutes left.
So I'll take that you've refused to answer the question about what you do for a living. The first
point of
refusal.
order, Chair.
I have a point of order, Mr. Perkins. Yes, Ms. Cleary?
On relevance, I think that Mr. Baines has made himself available and clear that he is in this committee today and say, hey, the sky is red. And would that be something that would not be correct?
You are certainly entitled to say that, Ms. Cleary.
Former Liberal Minister Baines, has the government paid you in any capacity to be here today and the former 2 appearances at this particular committee?
Former Liberal Minister Baines, it's clear you don't care about conflicts of interest and you don't care about the stewardship of taxpayer dollars. And as a result, $400 million improperly went out the door under your watch as minister. And when I asked you whether you take responsibility, you couldn't even answer that. You have no shame.
Thank you very much.
Point of order, Chair.
You don't care about is the taxpayer.
Just 1 second.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Ehren right here. Boy, do we have a wild committee video to show today. Disgraced Minister Navdeep Baines is testifying, and there is something seriously wrong with this guy. Larry Brock takes a swing at him. There's so many Conservatives trying to get some answers, but the Liberals come running. This asshole Erskine Smith, he calls quits to the meeting at the end. He's a bum. We've got problem child Ikra Khalid in this one. She's from outer space and she's going so hard today. She's like not from this planet. She's from somewhere else. Anyhow, let's get into this video. It's a wild one. It's long, but there are so many parts. It's all over the place. This disgraceful minister, former minister, Navdeep Baines, got issues. He can't answer any questions and has no accountability or regret, just a total loser. The rest of these Liberals that come out and get in front of the camera, you're doing a bad thing for your caucus every time you show any of your swollen Kool-Aid faces. Canadians think less of your party. You won't stand a chance in the next election. Anyways, let's get into this video. It's a crazy one to watch. Committee meetings are wild.
Mr. Brock, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Former Minister, Liberal Minister Baines, I'm going to follow up on a question put to you by my colleague, Mr. Cooper, where he not only didn't get the question out, but we didn't receive a response. And the question, to refresh your memory, Minister, was, did you take or do you take any former ministerial responsibility for the gross breach of trust and the misuse of almost $400 million of taxpayer money?
As I've indicated, it's important that ministers act in the best interest of Canadians and conduct themselves accordingly.
Minister, do you take responsibility? Under your watch. This was under your watch. Do you take responsibility? Canadians want to know.
Again, I'm answering the question. I keep on getting interrupted. As I've indicated, it's important that I advance what's in Canadians' best interest, and it's important that the policies are set in a manner and as well.
So the answer is, so thank you. The answer is no, you take no responsibility, which is really a hallmark of the Justin Trudeau government, particularly his ministers, current and former. Now, on the issue of misuse of taxpayer monies, you didn't want to answer the question put to you by Mr. Perkins. Your role at Rogers is one of Chief Corporate Affairs Officer. Under Justin Trudeau's government since 2015, Rogers Communications Canada, one of the largest telco companies in the world, has received a whopping $173,954,991 in taxpayer grants and contributions. So I wish to put that on the record. Now, Mr. Baines, I understand that you were in Ottawa this past weekend.
Mr. Brock, I have a point of order, yes.
Just the relevance of Mr. Brock's statements.
I think he was just reading into the record some numbers, and
it's relevant to Canadians, so I'll move on.
Mr. Brock, you've got 3 minutes.
Now, former Liberal Minister Baines, you were in Ottawa this past Sunday. When did you leave Ottawa?
I left Ottawa yesterday.
Okay, and while you were in Ottawa for approximately 3 days, did you meet with any government officials, elected or non-elected?
Yes, I did.
And who did you meet with?
I met with my former colleagues, Mark Holland, Gary Nandasangri, and Omar Algabra. We were celebrating Mark Holland's 50th birthday.
Okay. Did you meet with any non-elected officials?
I met with the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, Katie Telford, and Andrew Bevan.
Okay. And meeting with Katie Telford and Andrew Bevan, did you discuss the content of your testimony today?
No, I did not.
Were you provided any material from Katie Telford or Andrew Bevan or any other non-elected official or elected official to refresh your memory with respect to evidence that you're giving today?
No, I did not receive such information.
This is now your third appearance at this particular committee to discuss your involvement in the SDTC Green Slush Fund. Are you to inform this committee and Canadians that given the passage of time, you were not provided, nor did you seek any material to aid you in the recollection of important details with respect to your failed ministerial responsibilities to SDTC? Is that what you want this committee and Canadians to believe?
If, just to clarify, you're referring to my trip to Ottawa?
I'm talking about through all the times that you've appeared, not just your recent 3-day sojourn in Ottawa. I'm talking about in advance of all of your appearances. Have you not received or have you not sought out material to aid you in your testifying?
No, the information that exists is in the public domain with the Auditor General's report, for example.
We have learned in the past former government officials have been paid with taxpayer dollars to prepare for upcoming committee meetings, even while they were being briefed by government officials. Former Liberal Minister Baines, has the government paid you in any capacity to be here today and the former 2 appearances at this particular committee?
Could you repeat that again?
How much has the government paid you, sir, for your time testifying today, preparing for today, and the other 2 appearances at this committee? How much? Just the number, please.
0.
Thank you. That is the time. And just for the record, I didn't correct this earlier because I know Mr. Baines is aware. This is Mr. Baines' second appearance at this committee. He's also appeared at another parliamentary committee.
So that's the piece with Larry Brock. But watch this. Now things start to really get out of control. Ikra Khalid steps in. Oh, these Liberals are such poison. To themselves, drinking that toxic Kool-Aid, swollen faces, red skies. Check out the rest of this video.
With Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Baines, for reappearing today. We received the disturbing report from the Auditor General last June, where she found that the Trudeau government has turned the once legitimate Sustainable Development Technology Canada into a slush fund for Liberal insiders. The Auditor General made it clear that the blame for this scandal falls...
Point of order. Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Erskine-Smith.
I'm just curious, point of clarification. When a member misstates an official document, as he just did, is that to be corrected at some point?
Mr. Erskine-Smith, I'm here to move the meeting along.
Well, perhaps
there is flourish on both sides, and as I've stated before, a government member will follow Mr. Stewart, and there'll be the right to reply at that point.
So he is allowed to misstate an official document from an official.
Mr. Erskine, this is not a point of order. And on the non-same point of order, yes, Mr. Cooper, I will hear from you.
Yeah. Well, put on record the complete picture that Ms. Verscheren said with respect to the minister that he spoke. Yeah. He spoke to me, as did his policy advisor, and Leah Lawrence said she had talked to Mr. Baines 3 times before she agreed.
Thank you,
and she said he did know, but she had a direct conflict.
Your point has been made, which I think is why we're here, why we're doing this study, is that there are many statements out there that contradict one another. Yes, Ms. Khalid, you have the same point of order.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to clarify, because this is actually quite concerning, and more in a broad sense as opposed to the specific topic at hand. Is it okay for members to outright lie or to put misstatements on the record and that cannot be corrected? I mean, I can come in here in this committee today and say, hey, the sky is red. And would that be something that would not be corrected?
You are certainly entitled to say that, Ms. Khalid.
I'm not sure why we are...
And Ms. Khalid, that's right. And you'll have the floor right after Mr. Stewart to address any concerns you have about things that have been said previously. But to reiterate, it is your right to say the sky is red. Yes. Mr. Is this a point of order?
On the same point of order, for Ms. Khalid to impugn the integrity of members of this committee when simply I am reading verbatim from transcripts of committee testimony.
So...
And she says
Ms. Khalid,
is lies?
I hear you.
Does she live in an alternate universe?
Mr. Cooper, so Ms. Khalid, it is not helpful to accuse
like
colleagues
to
of lying, but I'm going to hear from you. Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you so very much. We do live in the same universe, and I would appreciate if my colleagues across the way would be more truthful in how they frame an issue.
Thank you.
And actually, excuse me?
Thank
Read
you.
the testimony.
Mr. Cooper, you too will have another turn. Ms. Khalid, if you could just conclude it, that's...
You know, Chair, there's no way getting through to them. That's fine.
But again, I appreciate words like untruthful. That's parliamentary. The other word, I would urge all members to avoid that.
The sky is falling. The bells are ringing. Iker Khalid, you're a problem child. Someone needs to give you a pacifier, or just sew your lips shut. Erskine Smith, you're a total bum. You won't get back into Parliament. I assure that Canadians see your repulsive attitude, repugnant demeanor. You're a disgusting human being. You're an embarrassment. You're an embarrassment to Canada.
Cooper, you have the floor for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Former Liberal Minister Baines, your department had contribution agreements with SDTC. It was funding SDTC, correct?
My understanding is that we allocated funds to Sustainable Development Technology Canada.
Yes, through contribution agreements. So why did your department, under your watch, fail to conduct even a single audit to determine SDTC's compliance with the contribution agreements with your department? Why did that not happen?
The monies were allocated to this arm's length organization that made the determinations, and there are regular routine checks and balances that exist in the system, and my understanding is that those processes were followed.
Balances didn't work because 59 million taxpayer dollars went out the door in contravention of the contribution agreements with your department. Were you unaware that monies upon millions of dollars of tax dollars were going out the door improperly? Is that what you're saying? You were oblivious to that fact as minister?
To answer that question, Mr. Chair, I've been very clear that the members on the board are independent. They make these decisions independently.
Former Liberal Minister Baines, do you accept that your department had a responsibility to see that the fund used public funds appropriately?
Mr. Chair, as I was saying before I was interrupted, that this is an independent board that makes independent
I would
decisions
invite you to read paragraph 6.68 of the Auditor General's report that says precisely that. We're talking about $1 billion tax dollars here that your department sent to SDTC. Your department had a duty to see that those funds were being used appropriately. Did you ask any questions to anyone about what was going on with $1 billion taxpayer dollars that your department was responsible for overseeing?
Mr. Chair, as I stated before, this independent board had clear rules on how to make decisions, on how to allocate funds, on how to engage management, and how to oversee the day-to-day operations. That is why it's an arm's length
How often
organization.
did you make inquiries about what was going on at SDTC? How often did you speak to your deputy minister? How often did you speak to ADM Noseworthy, who was sitting in on every one of these board meetings in which there were conflicts, in which tens of millions of dollars improperly went out the door?
Mr. Chair, again, the issues with respects to the conduct of the board members was not brought to my attention.
Well, before you went to Cabinet and requested $750 million be sent over to SDTC, did you ask for any kind of report, any sort of overview of what was going on at SDTC? An audit? Anything?
As the member knows, when monies are allocated, they're part of the budget that is debated in the House of Commons. That was all done in a very open, transparent way of where the funds would go.
Former Liberal Minister Baines, do you accept the principle of ministerial responsibility?
I think it's important to advance the interests of Canadians to make sure that we continue to support, in this particular instance, the clean tech sector.
Former Liberal Minister Baines, it's clear that you were AWOL as minister. You didn't care, and as a result, 400 million taxpayer dollars improperly went out the door at SDTC. So will you at least accept responsibility that you didn't do proper due diligence, you didn't ask the right questions, or is it that you just didn't care and turned a blind eye?
Mr. Chair, respectfully to the member, I care very much about the clean tech sector. I've stated why it's important and why we had sustainable.
Mr. Baines, you don't.
Point of order, Chair?
You don't care about
Point of
is
order,
the
Chair?
taxpayer.
Just 1 second. I'll come back to Mr. Cooper. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to flag the bells are ringing. What's going on? Quorum call? Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
You have the time for this last question, Mr. Cooper, and not a long wind-up. So yeah, you have time for a succinct question, please.
Former Liberal Minister Baines, it's clear you don't care about conflicts of interest and you don't care about the stewardship of taxpayer dollars. And as a result, $400 million improperly went out the door under your watch as minister. And when I asked you whether you take responsibility, you couldn't even answer that. You have no shame.
Thank you very much. Khalid, you have the floor, then Mr. Erskine-Smith, and after that, Mr. Brock. Ms. Khalid, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And while I appreciate all of our members... Sorry? While I appreciate all of our members' concerns on this issue, and I really do respect the way that this issue has been raised, although I think it could have been done with a little bit more class. But ultimately, I'm not sure what the objective is here. The majority of the witnesses that are presented in the amendment and the main motion as well, I'll speak to all of them all at once, Chair, just with respect to efficiency. They've appeared at previous committees before, and I'm happy to highlight which committees they've attended and when on this exact same issue. So we have Leah Lawrence has appeared twice on SDTC, on the Ethics Committee on November 8th, 2023, and Industry Committee, January 31st, 2024. Andrew Noseworthy has appeared twice already as well, on Industry Committee on December 11, 2023, and on June 5, 2024. And then ADM Douglas McConaughey has appeared on SDTC at Ethics Committee on November 8th, 2023. So I'm not sure if members opposite are feeling that the witnesses are not giving them the answers that they're wanting. I'm not sure if there's any misconception as to what has happened. I think this has been a very, very well documented affair thus far with respect to what has happened and what are the next steps. I'm really not sure, and I'm hoping that members opposite can perhaps clarify this for me, as to what the next steps are going to be. At this point in time, we can keep calling witnesses back time and time and time again, and then ask them the same questions again and again and again. But ultimately, what is it that we're trying to achieve here? And if we as a committee can get to that understanding, perhaps we can outline a plan ourselves based on consensus as to where we want to go and how we're going to get there. Because right now it just looks like we're trying to, grasp at straws at this point. And I don't think that is the best way that our committee should spend its time. So where I respect members and their interest in exploring this issue, I would encourage members to also note what is the end game, and perhaps work backwards from that end game to where we are now, because I don't think that that's what's happening. I think just calling in people again and again and again from one committee to another, it's just not helping them achieve what they want to achieve here. And if they're trying to catch gotcha moments or whatever it is that their objectives are, which are very unclear to me, I don't think this is the way to do it. So, Chair, I park my comments there, but I hope that members understand and can outline why, how, and what are the objectives. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I just ask members, is there agreement to excuse the witness? And I'm seeing thumbs up from Mr. Erskine-Smith, who is next. So, Mr. Baines, if you're still with us, I do want to thank you for your testimony today, and I appreciate your offer that should we have additional questions, you'll answer them in writing, and if that happens, the clerk will follow up with you. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn now to Mr. Erskine-Smith. You have the floor debating the amendment to the motion, please.
Thanks very much. Two points that I want to make. I'm not entirely new to the committee, and Mr. Cannings, it's good to be on committee with you. But I actually am not familiar with the previous testimony of Ms. Lawrence or Mr. Noseworthy. I understand they didn't attend to this committee. I understand they attended twice at Indu and Effie. And so the first point I just want to make is I'm not instinctively opposed to the idea. I haven't been able to ask them questions, but I would prefer to read their testimony first to determine whether it makes sense to invite them. And maybe my questions that I would ask have been answered. I genuinely don't know until I review the testimony. So some time, even over the weekend, would be appreciated. Which brings me to my second point, which is tomorrow's Halloween. Keeping promises is important, and I promised my kids that I'm going to carve pumpkins with them tonight. And that's why I did ask Chair if we were going to stick it to 2 hours. So I don't see any urgency here. This is going to exist on Monday as well, and so I would move to adjourn, and I hope we'd all agree to take this up on Monday.
You're a disgusting human being. You're an embarrassment. You're an embarrassment to Canada. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Oh, yeah. We're going to wrap it up right there, guys. Some of these committee videos are hard to get through. It's so frustrating, the Liberal tactics. Who do they think they're fooling? Nobody that's watching. My name's Ehren, Canadian Loony. Like, subscribe, share, get notified. Come and check out one of our live shows. We've got a great chat room. It's a lot of fun. Come and check it out. That's it. Thank you for watching this video and being a Canadian patriot. If you got through the whole video, you must be a patriot, because only people that don't care about this country could turn a blind eye to what's happening. Catch the next video. Thank you for watching this one. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Oh, yeah.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Oh, yeah. It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises. WTF.
Here. I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The worst that works.
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
right, gang. Thank you all so much for watching. We're back tomorrow. Friday, we start early, so remember that. Check us out. I've got a really interesting Melanie Joly, Minister of Affairs video I just dropped. Should be out there right now. Consider subscribing, consider a membership, get notified, like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm Ehren, Canadian Looney. Gonna go answer the door. Happy Halloween, gang. We'll check you tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in for this one. We'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot for watching.